Have you ever heard of a war where birds were the enemy? Yes, you heard it right, a war against birds, specifically emus. Let's take a step back to the 1930s, to the vast and wild landscapes of Australia. This was a time when the country was grappling with the economic repercussions of the Great Depression. The people most affected were the farmers, whose livelihoods depended on the health of their crops and livestock. During this period, a formidable adversary emerged, not a rival country or a vicious predator, but a bird, Emus to be precise. These large, flightless birds began to migrate from their usual habitats in the coastal regions to the fertile farmlands of the Australian interior. This migration led to a significant problem for farmers. The emus, in their quest for food and water, started causing extensive damage to crops. So, what happens when a flock of emus starts wreaking havoc on already struggling farms? Stay tuned to find out. In 1932, the Australian government declared war on emus. Yes, you heard that right. It seems almost laughable, but it's a fact etched in history. The Great Emu War, as it's now known, was a peculiar conflict where humans and emus faced off in Western Australia. The initial military strategies used against the emus were quite straightforward. Soldiers were armed with Lewis guns, a type of light machine gun used extensively in World War I, and they were given orders to exterminate the emu population that was wreaking havoc on the farmers' lands. The first operation was launched in Campion, where 50 emus were spotted. The soldiers took aim and fired. Dust flew, emus scattered, and when the dust settled, only a handful of emus lay still. It was a far cry from the anticipated result. The rest of the emus, seemingly unfazed, continued their march across the fields, much to the soldiers' dismay. The operation was deemed a failure. The emus were not only elusive, but also proved to be incredibly resilient. They could take a hit and keep running, disappearing into the vast landscape before the soldiers could land a killing blow. The Australian military, renowned for their bravery and skill, were being outmaneuvered by a flock of flightless birds. Public criticism started to mount. People began to question the decision to use military force against the emus, and the government was under pressure. The war was not going as planned. The emus were winning, and the soldiers were left scratching their heads, wondering how to tackle this unusual enemy. The troops were withdrawn due to the limited success of the operation. The government decided to regroup and rethink their strategy. It was a strange time in history, a time when the Australian military was held at bay by a group of birds. But did the emus claim victory just yet? Think again. The war was far from over. The humans were down, but not out. It was time to regroup, rethink, and relaunch their attack. The Great Emu War was just beginning. Round 2 of the Great Emu War saw the military taking a different approach. This time, they decided to bring in the big guns, quite literally. The Australian military was reinstated to fight against the emu onslaught, with a new strategy up their sleeves. They decided to mount machine guns onto trucks, transforming them into mobile hunting platforms. It was a clever ploy, bringing the fight to the emus instead of waiting for the flightless birds to strike. With this new tactic, the military found more success in their unusual war. They managed to confirm 986 emu kills, a significant increase from their initial attempts. However, despite their best efforts, the emus proved to be a formidable adversary. Their numbers were vast, and they were surprisingly resilient. The military's efforts, while commendable, were like a drop in the ocean. Now let's talk about the aftermath of this strange war. Following the military's withdrawal, the emu problem persisted. These large birds continued to ravage crops, leaving farmers in a state of despair. The government realized that a different approach was needed to handle this issue. They decided to implement a bounty system, offering rewards for every emu killed. This initiative sparked a wave of emu hunting across the region, as locals took up arms to protect their livelihoods. The bounty system proved to be far more effective than the military's attempts. Over a 6-month period, nearly 20,000 emu bounties were claimed, significantly reducing the emu population and alleviating the agricultural damage. However, the war with the emus was far from over. The issue would continue to resurface in the following years, a testament to the resilience of these extraordinary birds, and thus ended one of the most unusual wars in history. A war not against another nation or ideology, but against a species of bird. The Great Emu War served as a unique chapter in Australia's history, highlighting the lengths to which humans will go to protect their lands and livelihoods. It's a tale of perseverance, adaptation, and the indomitable spirit of both humans and emus alike. The Great Emu War, A conflict as strange as it was real. A tale born from economic hardship, an army pitted against flightless birds. The Australian government, desperate to protect farmers' livelihoods, employed military tactics in a war against emus. Strategies were devised, battles waged, and yet, the resilient emus held their ground. In the aftermath, the war stands as a peculiar yet poignant reminder of our struggle against nature. So the next time you see an emu, remember the war they once waged on the Australian farmers. A war that, in its oddity, reminds us of the lengths we go to protect our livelihoods. Thanks for tuning in, Weirdsville dwellers. Brace yourselves for more bizarre tales every Wednesday at 3 p.m. EST. If you haven't joined our community yet, hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop with the weirdest happenings in Weirdsville. Until our next rendezvous, never stop questioning the unknown and keep that curiosity of yours burning bright. Farewell for now.